on this video, I want to show you a little bit more about compositing. Up to this point, you learned a lot about color correction and color grading. Let me show you how we can put this all together to make a quick advertisement. So what I'm wanting to do is understand how to place objects in a scene that makes sense. And so what I went ahead and did is I'm adding this kind of zip file with these files here. One's going to be this image right here called mountains. Another one is car, and the idea is I want to put this like really cool looking car and have it like oversized in these mountains right here, this mountain range, with that cool picture. And of course, I'll probably throw on this logo in the end. Now, I also have this other file called 2-point perspective, and this is extremely important to understand. And I'll describe this as we go in, but when you're compositing, you're putting, one photo in with another, and you're trying to collect all these assets and placement photos, you have to understand how we perceive things. And so if it's off, then the viewer is going to feel it. It's going to feel like something's wrong. And so this is always something to consider. So this 2-point perspective will kind of help me out with this particular background image. So let me go and get started. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to move that over to the side. I'm going to create a new document. I'm just going to do 11 by 17 width, 300 of right now RGB. And so I'm going to go ahead and create this pretty large file. Now, don't worry, these images I supplied are pretty big. They'll fit just fine in this advertisement. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is drag over these mountains. And right away, because I'm dragging them in, let me click the check mark. I can see that they're just going to be a smart object, which is great. So that means I can size this down and back up and not have any issues. So I'm just going to place this where I feel like I want it to be. I want more of this ground plane in there to have more of the car. And so that's going to be my mountains. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the car for right now. And again, I'm holding an option on a Mac, so it'll size up for the middle. If I believe it's Alt if you're on a PC. I'm going to go and hide that for right now. And I'm just going to go and throw in the grid as well. And let me click OK. All right, so now that I have all this in here, I want to make sure that I'm placing everything in the right place. So let me just move that right here for a second. And I want to line up this 2-point perspective grid with this background. That way I know exactly where to place the car in the image and not just kind of dragging it around. A lot of times I'll see a lot of artists just kind of drag these around and they kind of hope that it fits in the right place, or it may feel good to them, or they may not know why. And so let me explain this 2-point perspective. Where you see this line right here, this is telling, that's like the viewer's eye line. And a lot of times, but that could be the horizon line. And so this one's going to be kind of easy because as I look off in a distance, I can easily see that horizon line right here in the middle. And so I want to place that there. But first, let me just choose a blending mode where I can see, that's just going to hide the white where I can see the black. And now that I've done, I chose multiply. So I'm just going to hold that option, make that a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to throw this right there where I have that horizon line. Again, I'm kind of matching it like where that eye line is. Now, my eye line is I'm actually looking down. And so typically, like if I'm looking at this picture, anything that's above this horizon line, I'm looking up at it. Anything below that horizon line, I'm looking down at it. So when I look at this car, I have to think to myself, am I looking up at it or am I looking down at it? So the eye line might be up here and I'm looking down at the car. I'm above it. So that tells me right away where I might want to place this car. It would be weird if I put it up here because in this picture, I'm looking down at it. But according to my eye line for this picture, I'd be looking up at, I should see the bottom of the car up here, not the top of the car. So it doesn't make sense for it to be up here. So really, it makes more sense for this car to be down here because I'm looking down at it because it's below that horizon line. And the eye line's probably right around here. I could figure out where that is underneath here. Look, as I start moving this around, I'm not looking at the top of the car, I'm looking down here. And also, here's a cool little guy. See these lines that are coming out here for that 2-point perspective from each side? I got to use these to my advantage. See how I line these up? Like, take this darker line that's right here and see how it lines up with this. I can almost see how that lines up. And that's telling me right there, maybe right about here, is about where the car should be. This makes more sense now. And now this looks like it should be a part of the image. And if it works with this 2-point perspective grid, it's going to work with the image underneath. And so that's how I'm using these as a guide. Now, before I do anything else, I want to fix this car real quick, because it looks to me like when you look at the front of the car, it looks bigger than the back of the car. It looks, see this building is kind of tilted a little bit. Obviously, when I look at these lamp posts are kind of tilted to the right. So whoever took this picture, well, they're off. And so I'm going to double click on that car. And I'm going to use my Camera RAW filter. And I'm specifically going to go to, let's see, optics. Nope, I'm sorry, geometry. I want to fix this geometry. So I'm going to click on the auto. What that's going to do is anything that's supposed to be straight up and down, it'll make it straight up and down. Anything that's left to right will be left to right. But because the front of the car looks a little bit bigger than the back of the car, I'm getting some perspective distortion. So it's a little too much for considering what I see in the image below. It's more flat. So it looks like they were, because they're far away, everything's a little bit more flat, which is right here. The viewer was whoever's taking the picture is closer to the car. So the front of the car is going to be much bigger than the back of the car. So I'm going to fix that with optics here. So here it says distortion. I'm just going to flatten this image just a little bit to kind of match more or less what the picture is like. So that's a lot of distortion. I'm trying to make this look really flat like the image behind it. So that looks good. Let me click OK. I'm going to go ahead and save it. So Command S to save, Command W or Control W to close it. And so now I am back here. So now I can see it, those adjustments were made in this image. And now I just want to select the car out. Now, I'm not trying to make this a really, really long tutorial. Normally I would use the pen tool and I would go all around this to make it a perfect selection. For today's demonstration purposes, I'm going to do a really fast selection and it'll look like this. So, and because it's a smart object, I can resize this how I like afterwards. So I'm going to choose the object selection tool, and right here under select subject, I'm going to choose cloud. So it'll take a little bit longer to get the selection. I'm just going to wait a second until it thinks. And there we go. So now it's selected the object. Now it's going to be a soft selection. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to do okay. And so now let me go ahead and mask that out. All right. Now, like I said, not perfect, because I can see there's some street below it. And, you know, I can go in and kind of fix those things as need be. Let me choose a bigger brush, a harder edge, and it's black. So I can go through here and make those selections. And I'm just switching back and forth. Now, you've kind of learned how to do some of these already in previous courses. So I'm not going to go over the full-blown, like, how do we select all this? But again, I would, honestly, I'd much rather use the pen tool. This does a good job of what I'm doing here, and I'm just trying to sell the fake just for having a quicker tutorial. So I'm just kind of getting some of these basics out of here. There we go. All right. And some of that stuff will be shaded out because of the shadow that I'm going to add. Just getting something out that may be a little weird. Yeah, I'm just going to paint that out. Oops. We click on the bottom, hold that shift, click right there, make a nice straight line. Okay, there we go. So that was a very quick selection. Now, right now, as I look at it, it's in the wrong location because of that 2-point perspective grid that I should be looking down at the car. Maybe about right there. Just lining up with those lines. So that looks like a pretty cool place to put it. I could probably move it around this way or this way, but according to the grid, it looks pretty good right there. So I'm just going to make it just a little bit larger. Making sure I'm still looking down at the car. There we go. Now again, this is a little bit larger than life. Obviously, there's a road right there, and this should be much, much smaller. So that's the point of the ad, is it making it look like it's bigger. But it just doesn't quite look like it's there. And so that's where color grading comes in. And so I want to make this look like it's a part of the scene. So up to this point, I've shown you kind of some various ways to do this. I'm just going to use gradient map for right now. Before I do anything else, I'm going to make sure that I select on this. So not here, because my sample color is not going to work. So let me hide this just for a moment, because when I select on this, I want to make sure that the blacks are right. So, oh yeah, actually, I don't need to do that because I only want this to affect the car. So I'm going to right click this and choose create clipping mask. There we go. So now this is only affecting the car. So I can select around in the image. So I want all the shadows to be, let's see, like pretty good right here. I'm just choosing dark areas in the image. I want the shadows to be there. I'm actually going to darken this a little bit. That's around 9%. So let me choose 9. My highlights. So this is where you have to think. Where do you want your highlights? Well, most of these highlights are these white areas. Probably going to be reflecting some of this up in the sky. I'm going to choose some of those bluish colors we see up here. But you know, these are really dark. And so I'm just trying to find some of these blues that may work. Looks really gray. And it's kind of cool. Sometimes you don't realize how the colors of the scene until you start selecting around. And so I'm going to find that really bright color blue, and I'm just going to up that amount. And let me turn away some of that saturation. So now I'm just kind of playing around a little bit. That's at 95. And then now I need a mid-tone. And this is where some of these like reds are going to come in. And so I'm going to find, there we go. I can see that brightness is around 57. And so let me change that to 57. There we go. So now I have this gradient map now. Now again, it's just color. So I want to affect it like it's being lit by that. So I'm going to choose soft light. There we go. So now the colors are matching a bit more. So I can lower that fill just a little bit. So I'm kind of changing the way it's being lit in the scene. Still doesn't look like it's there. That's okay. But now my shadows are, the darkness of this is matching, the brights are matching, and the midtones are matching, which I can see back here. So the idea is to make it look like it's more there. And so it's not done yet because now I need some shadows. So I'm just going to paint in some shadows really quickly. Now, one thing to think about shadows, you always have to look at the scene and go, what do these shadows look like? Those are pretty harsh shadows. Now remember, the closer something is to the ground, the deeper and darker it's going to be. The farther it gets away, look, you can see how things get a little softer. So I have to think, if this thing is huge, that must mean, and I'm going to sample some of the shadow colors here. That must mean it must be kind of soft. So I'm going to start off with soft. Let me lower that opacity by a lot. I'm just going to paint in a little bit and just kind of go over and over and over again. Now I'm painting on this side because if I look here, a lot of the shadows are going in this direction. So that's where the sun or the brightness is coming from. So a lot of this is going to be shadowed. If the color looks weird, I'm just sampling colors from the scene. So there we go. I should be getting shadows here. Again, I'm just painting the soft ones first, then you move on to the hard ones after that. There we go. So let me find a deeper color. And that's how blue the shadows are. And that very interesting. Didn't even know they were like that. So I'm going to paint really, really deep right next to it. So this should almost be black. Right where it hits the ground, that's where I'm painting in really deep, dark black shadows, like right where that's touching right here. Over and over and over again until it's almost pure black, because that's what the shadows look like in the scene. So I'll show you what this looks like afterwards. There we go. Now it's looking a lot better. So there's before and after. So the shadows kind of make a difference. So that's what the shadows look like. You notice how they're real soft and then deep areas. So now I'm just kind of giving it, I'll look back and see, does it match or not? It's doing okay. It's not perfect, but it's doing okay. I do want to add a little bit of something on top of all this. Let me add another layer on top, and I'll just do another clipping mask. I'll call this one just, call this one color. And this is going to be kind of interesting because I'm going to switch the blending mode to color. I only want to affect the color of the scene, not the value. So I'm going to take some of this right here, really, really soft, really low opacity. And I'm going to act like it's like if this is hitting here, it's going to be bouncing back up at this. So I'm just going to paint a little bit of that right there. Same thing here. I'm going to take some of this color and act like it's bouncing back up at it. Over this back here, paint it like it's hitting the back. Now, as far as the top goes, that should not be reflecting this top area. So we're going to select some of these colors. Let's see. And these bright colors right here. These blues. Just paint a little bit of that color on top. There we go. And so now you can kind of see before and after. And if it was a little too, like it seems like I'm getting a little too much right there, I can always paint it out I'm just going to lower that opacity just a little bit. Or I can change the soft light, but that helps out. It gives a little bounce from the ground up. All right, so now things are looking pretty good, but they're not perfect yet. So now the last step that kind of puts it all together is this. So I'm going to use my shortcut. This is a long shortcut. What it's going to do is it's going to flatten all visible layers into an empty layer and then paste in whatever we've done here into it. So on a Mac, it's Command Option Shift and the letter E. If you hold that on a PC, it'll be Control Alt Shift and the letter E. So I'm going to click on the topmost layer right here. You want to click on the topmost because it's merging everything you have below into one. So Command Option Shift E, and there. I can actually hide all these now, and I can call this, composite, like this. So now I just have that one layer that's right there, and I want to now add the final pieces to this. So I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I'm going to have some fun now. So I'm going to do some more color grading, and here I want to try to blend everything in a bit more. I just did the basics to begin with. Now I'm going to have both of them working together. So I have this color grading one where I can see all three, but I can individualize them with shadows, midtones, and highlights. So I want to look where we have our shadows are more blue. So I'm going to take this. I'm just going to move this to blue. Now notice if I go too far, it looks kind of weird. We may like it, but I'm just kind of looking at this. I want shadows to be a little more blue. And I'm going to take the highlights. I'm going to go the opposite of the color wheel and go yellow to the highlights. And you can kind of see what that's doing. So, and then now the midtones, I'm just going to push. I'm going to add some warmth to this. These are all very subtle. So now I can hit the letter P and I can see before and after. So P for before, after. Now things are working together, which I really like. So now I'm going to go to my basic, my basic, and I'm just going to go through all these here. I do want a lot more texture. I'm going to bring out all these highlights and shadows and texture. I'm going to raise some of that clarity to bring out details. Again, every time I just hit P for before and after, I notice, look at the details of my car really coming out. I'm going to raise those shadows just a bit so I can see them, because I couldn't quite see them on this edge. So before and after. This is looking really good. Let's see, I can add just a little bit of contrast now. Let's see, vibrance. I want to pull out those colors, make it really pop off the screen. Before and after, it's looking pretty good. Better now. I like the basic where it's at. Let me go to curves. I want those highlights to be just a bit stronger. Give it a little S curve, and the shadows be a bit darker there. And now I'm different. What I like to do is I add a little bit of grain to the image, especially when I have multiple layers. I'm going to zoom in and notice when I add grain, it just adds noise to it. So usually if this was a picture at this time of day, you'd have a little bit of grain to it. So we just add some of that. Now I would have a better mask, but that's already looking pretty good. Add a little bit of this, add a little vignette to darken the edges to bring focus to the car. Let me go back to my color grading, and I'm going to add a bit more to my midtones here. Go back to my shadow. So it's just a lot of back and forth until you're happy with what you have. But so far, this is looking pretty good. There we go. So there we go. Before, after. It's a lot different now. So just by adding that one little bit. Okay, so I like that. So let me click OK. And you can see now that looks really nice. I think one last thing I want to do, I'm just going to bring in, because I have this Audi PSD, I want to bring in the logo now. So let me bring that in. Let me switch this now, because I want to hide the black but show the white. So I'm gonna go to screen. There we go. I can put this down here for the logo. Let me make that a little bit smaller. And there we go. So now we have something that we can kind of really play with. So I think this will be a neat advertisement for this. Now I'll probably do a bit more, like add some glows and stuff, especially to this. But that shows something kind of interesting. This looks larger than life. It fits the perspective, so it makes sense. And the color grading makes it look like it's there. And so that's why we're learning techniques like color grading and color correcting to fix All this other stuff is just analyzation. So analyzing shadows, analyzing light angles, and other stuff just to put it all together. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this.